Hey, folks, welcome to the DarkHorse podcast Inside Rail. I am delighted to be sitting with Michael Yan and Masako Ganaha. People who watch DarkHorse will remember Michael Yan from a discussion I did with him actually in the Panama Canal zone. We were literally sitting on the shores of the Panama Canal. Masako was also on that trip. Michael and Masako took me to Darien to see what was taking place with the immigration crisis, and I wanted to have them back on to talk about the current state of the world and the patterns that are unfolding. Michael and Masako have been traveling the world. They have been investigating deep into literature, some of it quite ancient, to understand how the common patterns of human history are manifest in the present with new technologies and different kinds of personalities. But before we go any further, let me just say, Michael and Masako, welcome to DarkHorse.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I should probably also mention that if I didn't say it before, you are married and you are expecting your first child.
22 weeks today.
I am thrilled about this. Congratulations, you guys. I'm thrilled about. There it is. I'm thrilled about it, not just for you guys who are going to make tremendous parents, but I am also excited that this child is going to be one of a kind, and I think a force of nature. So the world is better off for your happy news.
Thank you. You know, when we stayed with Catherine Austin Fitz for more than a month recently, and Catherine asked us in December. Remember, we were sitting upstairs in Netherlands and Stavoren, and she said, "What is your number one goal in 2026?" And we said, "Make a baby." And she was like, I think she was shocked at how just direct, like there was no, save anything, just make a baby. And anyway, so within very short time after that, Masako was obviously pregnant and laying on the floor in Hamburg. We had left Netherlands and went up to Germany, Hamburg, laying on the floor, morning sick. And I said, "You're in the gym." And from there, it's just getting better and better every day.
Well, this is going to be fantastic, and I'm looking forward to the happy news when your child is born.
Thank you.
Our first sponsor on this episode of the Inside Rail is Dose. Dose for Your Liver is a tasty drink that supports liver health. Your liver has hundreds of functions in your body, most famously as a filter, an organ of detoxification. Modern life is pretty toxic, so your liver has been hard at work. Dose for Your Liver was formulated to cleanse your liver of unwanted elements, aid digestion, and maintain your body's ability to filter out toxins. Dose for Your Liver has 4 active ingredients: milk thistle, ginger, dandelion, and turmeric, in a base of delicious organic orange juice. Dose is gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, and vegan, and it tastes fantastic. Dose comes in sleek glass bottles with a stainless steel shot glass to take your dose with. You can drink it straight or add it to other drinks. Zach thinks it would be excellent in coffee. Not so sure about that, but you do you. Dose for Your Liver's in-house clinical studies found significant improvements in standard measures of liver health, as indicated by levels of enzymes, including aspartate aminotransferase and alanine aminotransferase, after study participants drank daily dose for as little as 8 weeks. The liver produces and regulates cholesterol, stores vitamins and minerals, and impacts digestive and metabolic health, among many other things. Dose promotes liver function, aids digestion, eases bloating, and even boosts energy levels. Stick with Dose and feel the incredible benefits over time: more energy, better digestion, reduced bloating, healthier liver enzyme function, reduction in brain fog, and better sleep. Ready to give your liver the support it deserves? Head to dosedaily.co/darkhorse or enter DarkHorse to get 35% off your first subscription. Your body does so much for you. Let's do something for it. That's dosedaily.co/darkhorse for 35% off your first month subscription. Our second sponsor for this episode is brand new to us. It's Puori. Puori makes a wide array of supplements and powders, from vitamin C, magnesium, and B complex to creatine, collagen, and protein powders. What makes Puori different is how clean and pure all of their products are. All of them. Puori was founded in 2009 by 2 men who wanted to create the cleanest, purest products to support their own active lifestyles. Since then, their product portfolio has grown to address common nutritional deficiencies in the developed world, and they have never compromised on quality. From the fundamental understanding that health requires good diet, physical activity, recovery, and balance, the founders of Puori reject quick fixes and have insisted on the most stringent purity testing on all of their products from the very beginning. We're using Puori's magnesium, which is excellent. Like all of Puori's products, their magnesium complex is third-party tested and certified by the Clean Label Project against over 200 contaminants, and at any time you can scan the QR code on your bottle for the test results for your particular batch. Heather's mom is expecting her first shipment of multivitamins and fish oil from Puori any day and is excited to finally have products that she knows are safe and contain exactly what they say, nothing more and nothing less. And our son Toby has been making protein-enriched smoothies for a couple of years, but has had a hard time finding a protein powder that he liked. Most of them are strongly flavored and gritty, but he wanted one that would disappear into his shake, letting other flavors shine. Now at 19, he's found his protein powder. Puori's grass-fed whey protein powder, bourbon vanilla flavor. Toby says, out of all the protein powders I've tried, this is the best. The flavor is mild, it doesn't intrude on the other flavors, it's smooth going down, and is full of great whey protein. Most protein powders aren't just gritty and artificial, they're actually toxic. Several studies, including those done by Consumer Reports, show that a significant fraction of protein powders on the market contain lead in amounts that are known to be dangerous. You shouldn't be eating lead at all, much less in a supplement you're taking to improve your health. Not only is Puori whey protein powder free of lead, it also delivers a whopping 21 grams of whey protein in each serving and is free of GMOs, pesticides, and exogenous hormones. Toby loves the bourbon vanilla flavor, but they've also got a dark chocolate flavor made from organic cocoa powder. Whether you're looking for magnesium or a multivitamin, collagen, or protein powder, you can't go wrong with Puori. Use code DarkHorse at Puori.com/DarkHorse to get 32% off Puori grass-fed whey protein when you start a subscription. In addition, you get a free shaker worth $25 on your first subscription order, which brings total savings to $49. Go to Puori.com/DarkHorse and use the code DarkHorse at checkout for this exclusive offer.
Let's try to put the model that you have developed on the table so that DarkHorse listeners can understand it. And I know from experience that this is a difficult task because you guys are so deep into the material that it can be hard to put it in plain language. But I also know that your track record of predicting events is second to none. And so from our perspective as outsiders to that process, we should be paying very close attention to what it is that you're focused on and why. Even if it sounds like it might not be important, it clearly is. It's part of a consistent model that allows you to see into the future in a way with more clarity than most other people. So where do you think we should begin? What should people be paying attention to?
One, actually, that's very important is, as you know, with Heather, 1 + 1 does not really equal 2 if you have a great partner. It actually equals some much larger number, and it's not 3. It's like 5. So actually, when Masako and I travel the world together and go to different places, she sees things, despite I have a lot more experience doing a lot of the things, Masako always invariably sees things I don't see or notice and helps assemble things in ways. So our development of the we call it the paradigm has increased dramatically as our teamwork has become such a beautiful synthesis actually of knowledge and experience, because we go to these places together and we just watch the ships go through the Panama Canal or Danish Strait or Hamburg or whatever and Rotterdam, and we just learn so much. So what I'm getting to is it's better just to listen to Masako talk because she can say it as well as I can. I mean, she's living it day and night. We live together studying these things. So I'll be quiet at this point.
Oh.
Not to put you under any pressure.
Well, let me say that what you've just delivered is a very crucial piece of wisdom for people who are trying to find a partner, which frankly, I wish more young people were. But the importance of finding somebody who is not similar to you, but is complementary to you, so that you do end up much more powerful than the sum of your parts. That's crucial. And once you've been part of such a team, you understand more about, why human beings are traditionally so obsessed with finding a mate. It's the most important decision you ever make.
It is. a team is always greater than the sum of its parts.
A good one.
Team.
Yeah.
Right. When I was in special forces, I was on 2 A teams. I said, wow, this is amazing to be on teams with these men. Unbelievable. And I was always the youngest, so I was always more the liability than the asset. So for me, it was great. I was in the university. And then, to find Masako is just another, what would you call that? Another part of the heavenly journey. I think when Masako and I were trying to find a word for what it's like to know that we have Kenjiro, we call it nickname Kenjiro now, forming. And we were looking for the right word. Happiness is not the right word. Excited is not the right word. And then Masako said, we're blessed. Blessed. I said, that's right. That's the word. We're blessed. We are. And so if you can find a complementary partner, you are blessed right there. Like you should be thankful every day if you find a complementary partner that you're just so happy with. And actually, happiness is too small of a word. It's definitely blessed.
It's blessed, and your child ends up the manifestation of the quality of that partnership. So it is a sobering and joyous decision if you do it right. All right. Masako, maybe you do want to start off and tell us, if you were trying to understand the craziness of the world at the moment and you wanted to make sense of it, what would you be focused on?
Yes. As spending all the time with Michael, and Michael studies all the time. Every time mailman rings our bell, new book arrives. And it's new, I said new book, but antique book that we just ordered. So from 1800s or early 1900s, and we constantly study. But interestingly, I learned from Michael, because first I'm from Okinawa. It's a small island located in south part of Japan. So we have a lot of American bases, and we have a threat from CCP. And so it's really politically focused place. So I was always focusing on my home island. But in order to understand what's going on at my feet, I need to understand the bigger picture. That's one thing I first learned when I went to US. And I also learned that in order to understand what is going on, I have to have a right mindset, and my mind needs to operate under, Michael always say, what's the term you say? The
context.
Context, and also the framework of how you understand paradigm. So Michael always say, if you get surprised, then you don't have right paradigm. So what I am still learning is to have a correct paradigm. And as I started to learn that I need to pay attention to not the daily news, what's happening today or what will happen tomorrow, but if I get used to thinking to see what's the ocean current is going, then I can understand things that I would be surprised before. I can understand, oh, yes, it would happen because that's what the globalists are doing. So the famine, I'm not surprised. And actually yesterday we went to, because we have old maps and we want to frame in a good, like a material. So we went to a framing company. And then I asked, is there any problem happening to your business? And the lady said that they are hard time having glue and also plastic bags. So when I heard this, it's just, yes, that before I asked the question, I knew the answer, but I just trying to ask to make sure what is really going on the ground. So those things, the information is really fits to your thinking. So thinking pattern is very important for us to acquire first.
Okay, beautiful. You said a couple things I want to pick up on, but I'm thinking I forgot to say more about who you guys are. Masako Ganaha is a little bit hard to characterize, but among other things, she is a well-known podcaster in Japan. Michael Jan is, of course, a former Green Beret, and you have now emerged into this profession that doesn't have a name, where you're building a paradigm. And what I wanted to specifically highlight in what you said, Masako, is you said something very important, which is, if you are surprised, it's because your paradigm is wrong, and that your purpose in the work you do is really to build a paradigm that is incorrect as infrequently as possible. Now, this resonates for me so clearly, because in science, it is exactly the same thing. When you are surprised, you know that there's something you don't yet understand. That's the indication that there's profit to be made by digging in that location where something has surprised you, instead of shying away from it because, well, I don't know what that is. Let's go back to a place where I feel comfortable. You should focus on it. And in fact, I think it was Isaac Asimov who said the most important phrase in science is not aha, it's that's funny, right? Anytime something that's funny, you know that there's something important to be found. So, all right, you guys have been building a paradigm. You've been building a paradigm that has you looking at books, but not new books to find out what the latest thinking on things is. You're going back into old books from the 18th and 19th century. How can that possibly be relevant in modern times in which so much has changed?
Oh, Lord. I mean, when you dig into these old books, I mean, we have a lot of books from the 16, 17, 1800s, 1900s, of course. And the more you study these things, the more you would more ask yourself, how do you not spend a lot of time in these books? Because truly nothing is new under the sun. And the technology is, of course, we know that, but the alligator still does alligator stuff. And the rivers still flow the way rivers flow. Isaac Asimov, I read all of his nonfiction books when I was a teenager. I was basically addicted to physics. And I was trying to find what is truth. I was trying that ever since I was maybe 9 or 10. And at first I went into chemistry, and I was like, this is fun, but it's not. So somehow I drifted into physics, and I was deeply into physics before I even realized what physics was. And so I spent many years just basically not doing well in school because I was just physics. And so I didn't read his fiction stuff because I wasn't into that, which I think was a fault. I should have. But, he wrote books on magnetism and gravity and all those sorts of things, and heat transfer, I think. I don't recall, but I read so many books on thermodynamics and all these things. But what some of the things that you learn from reading all these physicists is not what to think, but how to think, what you just said. You shouldn't be, aha is a good feeling. Hey, we got that right. But it's really, the fun part is what's in the next shovel, right? And we're like when we went down to Darien, you noticed the black soil in the rivers, and you know what that meant, right? Possible gold up those rivers. I think you mentioned that when we were going across one of the rivers in the Darien. I think you said that when we were crossing one of the rivers at Las Blancas, right? And but anyway, but that what did Isaac say? Isaac Asimov? He didn't say not aha, but. Isn't that curious? That's funny. That's right. That's a better way to put it. He's such a great writer. You know what I mean? It's like, that's funny. Yeah. Like, and the imaginary number I, because as your brother has spoken, and I think you have too, our mathematics, something's wrong with it. It doesn't work right. Something's wrong with the whole framework of mathematics. But, so we have this imaginary number I in mathematics so that we can make, basic equations balance, right? So that such and such. Well, I've noticed that when it comes to analyzing situations, I call it the imaginary number S, which is stupid or that sort of thing. You'll say, why would they be doing that? That's stupid. The only way I can balance this equation to equals is they're stupid. Like, when I noticed the ambassador to Thailand years ago kept doing things that looked very sabotagey towards Thailand. She was the ambassador to Thailand. Christy Kinney was her name. I had a major public battles with her in Thailand, which nobody knows about in America, but it was all over the Thai news for months. And Christy Kenny, at first I thought, wow, she's really just made some mistakes. And at some point I thought she's very incompetent. And then at some point I thought, this is sabotage. And so when I just factored in that, changed the imaginary S from stupid or just incompetent, let's say, is more friendly, the imaginary number I, incompetence, and change that to sabotage, suddenly I'm not surprised by what I'm seeing with the ambassador that the ambassador was doing in Japan or the ambassador was doing in India or the one in Nepal. I wasn't surprised anymore. In fact, then I was able to start predicting things. So I'm like, okay, we might have made some progress on the paradigm here. This is actual sabotage, because I was surprised constantly by the things that they were doing, and I was unable to predict what they would do next. But then when I just said, they're sabotaging, I could start predicting quite well, actually. And I was not surprised. So that's the key.
That's the indicator that you've corrected something. Once your paradigm starts being more predictive, that means you've corrected an imprecision in it at the very least.
Our final sponsor this week is VanMan. Here at DarkHorse, we love VanMan's products and are certain that you will too. Absolutely everything we've had from them has been exceptional. From their Pearl Eye Cream to tallow and zinc sunscreen, from coconut and magnesium deodorant to their remarkable remineralizing chewing gum, all of it is superior. Today, however, I want to focus on their tallow and honey balm in particular. Tallow is the best moisturizer on earth because the fatty acids in tallow are nearly identical to the oils in your own skin. One use and you'll feel the difference. Your skin will be soft and smooth, and a little goes a long way. This stuff lasts, and it's fantastic for you. And Tallow Balm isn't just a moisturizer. It can replace everything from lotions and wrinkle creams to Neosporin and diaper balm. It works on rashes and scrapes, acne and sunburn. Our boys, young men at college now, swear by it too. The ingredient list of VanMan's Honey and Tallow Balm is short and entirely edible. It's got 100% grass-fed and finished suet beef tallow, organic raw honey and beeswax, and organic cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil. You can get it with or without essential oils. VanMan's Tallow and Honey Balm is powerful enough to heal the skin, yet safe enough to spread on your toast. That's real ingredients. And unlike many other seemingly small, wholesome companies making healthy organic products, VanMan is the real deal. Remember when Burt's Bees made great stuff? Native, Dr. Squatch? All of these companies have been bought by mega corporations and private equity firms, which hijack beloved brands and replace it with the usual corporate slop. VanMan's will never sell out. Ready to ditch the corporate chemicals? Go to vanman.shop/darkhorse26 and use code darkhorse26 for 15% off your first order. That's vanman.shop/darkhorse26 and use the code darkhorse for 15% off your first order. VanMan, real ingredients, no exceptions.
So I want to go back to your point here about the S factor, stupidity. And I want to try this out on something that is very much on people's minds at the moment and try to illustrate the point you're making about how to think in such a context. The shutting down of the Straits of Hormuz. That, to me, looks like it could have one of three explanations. One explanation is that President Trump was surprised that that happened as a result of his attack on Iran. Okay, that would be stupid. Another is that it wasn't stupid, but the purpose wasn't the president's. In other words, if, as has been hypothesized by many, Israel wanted basically U.S. hegemony in the Middle East to come to an end, then bringing about chaos by causing the Straits of Hormuz to shut down might be wise from their perspective, or smart at least, but not smart from the perspective of the United States. And then a third possibility would be that actually this was smart in a way that we don't understand, whether it was justifiable or not, that it could be that the president has a deeper purpose, and that the idea is if oil stops flowing through the Straits of Hormuz, then demand for oil coming from the New World will go up. And since we control most or all of that oil in one way or another, that this is actually a win from the point of view of the United States in a way that is cryptic. Is this a fair presentation of the various things that might account for the appearance that something is strange about the president having taken action that threatens the world economy?
Yeah. I mean, that could be, categorizing some of the various categories of thought process that could arrive at this point. But then I published on Substack and said in many interviews, I said it in very clear terms in 2025, like I think in maybe June or July of 2025 on my Substack, that I said in almost verbatim that there's a high chance that the Zionists will close down. And I'm not talking about Israel. I'm talking about Zionists, because the Zionists are clearly attacking Israel. The Zionists are clearly attacking a lot of Jews too. That's clear. It's crystal clear. So, but the point is that's not the point. The point is, the two major elephants there's many oligarchs that are fighting. The two major ones at this time in history are Zionist and Chinese Communist Party. That's the two major, biggest elephants fighting. There's a lot of others, but that's the two that are tipping the tables the most. And so it made sense based on just a lot of stuff that's hard to explain. But if I could give you a library key to my memories, you would see where I'm going to. But the point is I published that I thought that the Zionists, high chance they would close the Strait of Hormuz and blame Iran. Now, again, I put that in clear words. I said it on many interviews, said it on my Substack and other places, and then it happened. Now, I know that sounded crazy at about this time last year in 2025, and then it happened. How did that happen? How did Masako and I were at BASF in Germany twice before Nord Stream got cut down. The second time we were there was 14 days before Nord Stream got blown up. Masako and I were inside of the BASF plant, the biggest chemical company in the world. We were inside of that plant in Ludwigshafen, Germany. And Masako and I were right there getting a tour. And I said, what happens if Nord Stream gets cut? And what did he say? The guy giving us the tour?
We are dead.
Yeah. Meaning BASF is dead, right? And so they're not. They're still alive. But 14 days later, and I had bought an iPad, and this might actually be the one, that was for nothing but watching Nord Stream flows. So I just kept it open, and it just had a website. And I just watched those flows, and they were constantly going. And there was a website where you could track how many cubic meters per second were flowing through the pipelines, right? And at one point, it went to zero. I said, look, Masako, it's gone to zero. And anyway, then you see the rest is history. Nord Stream is cut. We also predicted that Groningen gas field would be cut. And many people, I said that on Jordan Peterson's show, I think, with Ava Vlardingenbroek. And I said, I think Groningen could be shut. And many people said, that's crazy. It's the biggest gas field in Europe. And I'm like, hello. If that's what if you're trying to create depopulation, one of the best ways to get there, besides things like pharma, is food, is famine.
So hold on. I just want to point out how significant this is, because our public discussion, our public sense making is deeply broken because people do not have the developmental or educational experience to understand how it's properly done. And one thing that is true is the fact that an idea sounds crazy is not evidence one way or the other about its veracity. The evidence that an idea is not crazy comes from whether or not it predicts future events. And you're telling me that you were so concerned about the cutting of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline that you actually purchased an iPad and was tracking the flow at the point that it blew up, a surprise to the rest of us. So that's how concerned you were. What that says, if you did it once in a lifetime, maybe you got lucky. Maybe you just made a good guess. But if you do that time and again, what it says is, as Masako was pointing out, your paradigm must be accurate. And that means when a guy who has an iPad tracking Nord Stream 2's flow at the moment that it's blown up says famine, you should sit up and take notice. What does he know that I don't know? Why is he talking about famine in the same breath that he's talking about the destruction of a pipeline that he predicted? So, okay, you and Masako have both described famine. It's clearly on your minds. Where does famine fit in your paradigm? wouldn't, in public, we will hear that, a bunch of unpredictable things have happened, and that's why there's a food shortage. Apparently, it's not unpredictable. If it happens, it's another thing you will have put on the map based on your paradigm. What does your paradigm say about famine at this moment?
You want to take it, or should I do it? Okay. Well, Masako and I spent a great deal of time in the Darien Gap where you came with us. We're very thankful that you came down there, and you and Chris Martinson came. It was very important. And the interviews that you and Chris did after that were very important because you also see things in ways that we don't, and that's vital. So we took you down to that bridge. I found that bridge some years ago because I thought that they were going to use the Darien Gap when famines come. We think, that famines create something called HOP, human osmotic pressure. And that human osmotic pressure is the push and the pull of migration. And that, if I were the enemy and I wanted to invade the United States, and doing this stigmergically, I would open the Darien Gap. I would open the Darien Gap. I would make that a 4-lane highway for invasion. I would create famines, and I would get you right through your belly button, right there, right? And so, and that's why I spent a year in Panama since Biden was installed, actually. And Masako, you must have spent 6 months down there or something. How long were you in Panama? A lot. And so Masako kept coming and going. Sometimes she had to go to Japan. And we took 60 or 70 people down there. We took congressmen and Laura Logan and quite a lot. And so, but what? While we were down there, we realized that the Darien Gap is also a place for screwworms, right? That's where the front line of the screwworm fight is. We've got a whole section of our library here that's on entomological warfare. Entomological warfare is a key aspect of warfare, like ticks from the skies, mosquitoes, weaponized mosquitoes. It was after the Cuban doctor Finlay discovered that mosquitoes were a vector for malaria in the 1890s or so, that the United States was able to wage war on mosquitoes and actually build the Panama Canal, right? And but when we realized, Masako and I were talking with an intel guy actually in Panama, and he told us about these screwworms. And that was about 5 years ago now. And as soon as we left the meeting, I said, whoa, we got to contact these people that irradiate the flies for the U.S. government in Panama. It's a U.S. government agency, because I'll bet you those screwworms end up back in Texas, right? So we contacted them on the same day, right after the meeting. And we asked for a tour of the facility, the screwworms, where they irradiate the male fly. Basically, I think you know how it works, but these screwworms, they get inside. It's a fly. The larva of a fly is the worm. They get into the cattle and the sheep and people and dogs and kill them, right? And so the United States fought these things out decades ago, and the front line of this is the Darien Gap. And that's where we irradiate billions of male flies, because the females only mate once in their life. If they don't procreate, the replication number goes below 1 and the population collapses, right? And so at this point, when we emailed to the facility COPEG twice, and by the tenor of their response, I'm like, this is a cover-up. I've dealt with so many governments around the world. That's the U.S. government. Those screwworms are probably going to end up back in the United States. I published it immediately with their emails, and now screwworms are a problem in the United States. It's, again, we got it right. The paradigm was right.
Hold on. I just want to point something out. When I came to Darien, I don't remember exactly where we were. I think we were returning to Panama City, and you talked me through this. You said, keep an eye out for screwworms. I barely knew what they were at the time. And you said, keep your eye out. And I said, why? And you gave me this explanation. And 6 months later, 8 months later, suddenly it shows up in my news feed that there's a screwworm problem emerging in the United States, just as you had predicted. So if we can go back to the paradigm and what you said about the Darien Gap. You said you found this bridge. Now, I know the story, so I'll just make it short. You detected that something must be going on there. You predicted that this would be an attack vector and that it would require infrastructure in order to open the Darien Gap, which was, before this time, close to impenetrable. It was certainly so difficult to cross that it was a barrier. In fact, it was left incomplete in order to keep that barrier there for numerous reasons, to protect agriculture, to protect against military invasion. So you went looking and found a very modern project constructing a bridge that literally doesn't go anywhere. It crosses the river into a very lightly inhabited part of Darien. There's no justification for a road like this. And when you asked questions about what it was for, you got back answers that didn't make any sense. That this, 4-lane, thoroughly modern bridge across this river was there in order that the farmers on the other side could transport yucca.
That's right. They said yucca. You were there when they told us that. Yeah.
Right. It's a nonsense explanation. So your paradigm says somebody is preparing something and they need that bridge to be there when they do it. So they're building it without an explanation that makes any sense because they know what the real explanation is and they can't share it. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think the government people that I spoke with actually honestly didn't know, the ones that I spoke with, because I was down there alone on the first trip when I found it. And how did I find the location? Because we have such a collection of old maps that hopefully you'll see one day. But looking at old maps from the 15 and 16 and 1700s, that is where you would build a road right there because that's where the trails were and, just stigmergic type stuff, right? That's where you would do it. And so every time I went to Darien, I would go down there. Sorry, I got to turn that thing off. Every time I would go to Darien, I would go check down in that area thinking if they start to build a road, I'm going to find it right here, probably, right? So I was looking at old Indian maps and old Indian trail or maps that the Spaniards made of the Indian trails and stuff. And so, but the point is, and that is where they're building the road, right? And so how I actually originally found it was there was mud on the road and I followed the mud over that little hill that you went to. And when I saw the mud, I was like, there's there's big mover stuff there. And there it was, there's the bridge. So launched the drone, found the second bridge. And there you go. Now, Darien, if you want, keep in mind, that has been a very important place for 500 years now, right? The Scottish met their end there, and like literally and got absorbed by England for their failure in Darien. It goes on and on. The French got smashed there. There's been so much war there over that route because the wars that we look at, they're always about routes, resources, and ideology. And the ideology is about human resources. The most important resource of all is human resources. Human resources are that's what they call them at the corporations, right? Human resources. So what is this all about? Human resources, right? And so, Masako and I talk about this a lot. When you look at the effort that's put into, mind manipulation or just controlling people, it must be equal to or greater than all the physical infrastructure we see around the world, all these roads, railways, electrical, Suez, Panama Canal, all this stuff, all these buildings. There must be more invested in controlling our minds than even goes into all that. And the more you study this, it's extremely sophisticated. And so when I look in these old books, I'm listening to the old song play in all these old books, and it's the same music on a different instrument being played generation after generation.
Okay. You said something very interesting at the top there. You said you didn't think that the bureaucrats you were talking to even knew that the story they were telling you was false. And I would argue, in being an observer of human behavior and the failure of government over my entire adult life, I would say this is a very common pattern. And that, in fact, it mirrors something that's actually well known in evolutionary biology. My undergraduate advisor, Bob Trivers, who just recently died, was famous for many things. One of them was the study of deceit and self-deception. And his argument was that we are capable of deceiving ourselves because it allows us to deceive others more effectively. And what I would argue is that the fact that the bureaucrats you're dealing with don't know that they're telling a nonsense story actually is what allows whatever is driving the policy to get away with it. If the politicians always knew they were lying, it would be much easier to figure it out. But when these people actually accept the story that they are, in this country, let's say, disrupting the family because there's something racist about the idea of family, right? That's a nonsense story. But if your purpose is to hobble the American public so it can't defend itself, then you want to disrupt the family, because the family is a way of passing the capability of making meaning correctly outside of the established venues, which are under the control of some unholy power. So they have to disrupt the family, and the people who are actually initiating the policy don't know that they're being used for that purpose, just as the bureaucrats in Panama didn't know that they were being used to cover the construction of a bridge whose purpose has yet to be revealed.
Right. I mean, I've talked with a lot of people in the Panamanian government constantly, and, they typically seem to be good people, but they're gears in a clock, and they don't even know what time it is. They don't even know they're in a clock. Their job, like American, like me, when I was in Special Forces, my mission was, for 3 years we trained, was to parachute into Poland and fight Soviets behind enemy lines, right? And so I was a gear in a clock, and I had no idea. I thought I was there to defend the United States, right? I thought and I was ready to do it. And it would have been straight up kamikaze, and we knew it, right? So when I look at Japanese kamikaze, I'm like, I actually was one. And my 2 A teams were, and there were other A teams that we would have done it, right? But we were gears in a clock. We didn't even know we're in a clock, much less what time it is. You would never get me to do that mission now, right? It'd be like, you're out of your mind. It's like, you're going to put a parachute. I'm going to put on a parachute and parachute into Poland and fight Soviets and blow up missiles and kill the crews and that sort of stuff. And this is all for what? Some corporation. That's what it's really for, ultimately.
All right. So let's go back to the paradigm that you're illuminating for us. You said that famine is the generator of human osmotic pressure. And by that, you mean that a famine motivates people to move. That the Darien Gap is the expected route where presumably people motivated by a famine in South America would flood north. Now, the question is, maybe I'll ask this to you, Masako. Who wants this? Who is, to the extent we know, who is the enemy that is building a bridge ready for the osmotic pressure that they predict is going to happen in South America to drive people to flood north? Who would do that, and why?
Like Michael say, the biggest players, it's not just one group. There are multiple. But now the 2 biggest ones that we can detect are CCP, Communist Chinese Party, and also the Zionist. That's very becoming even increasingly more obvious by seeing this war again happening in Gaza and all those areas, and against Iran too. And as being Japanese, it's very sad that my country, and it's not even a player. So it's very difficult situation. But I think those people are doing this. And their ultimate control, at first I thought they are trying to depopulate population. And I was looking at this, and then looking into, so in order to depopulate us, they are doing, for example, pandemic that happened. And then those COVID scam, and also war against our food, and also medical system, and drug warfare, and all kinds of things are under, it's like their tactic how to depopulate us. But one more layer up, there is, so why are they doing to depopulate us is to control us. So that's why under this tactic, they also creating a framework. Like Catherine Austin Fitts also, she emphasized all the time that they are creating digital jail. So it's all connected under the framework of control. And recently in Japan, I know in US you have a social security number, and social security number at first when government distributed this number, they said on the card that this is not for purpose of identification, but now you have to have this to do many kinds of things. So it's purely self-identification. And Japan, we I think it started maybe 10 years ago or so, I recall. We, in Japan, we also started so-called MAID number. It's a Japanese version of social security number. And government will send you a piece of paper which has number. And, but if you do not register and create a new card tied to this number, and then they say, with this one card, it's very convenient. You can use this as your insurance. You can use this card at the hospital, or if you tie to bank account, it's very easy to do so many things. But it's not mandatory to create this card. So I myself or people who are warning about this digital jail don't create this. But just this week, government, the dominant party, LDP, proposed that it should be mandatory to create this card. So they are going towards this. And then as myself experiencing pregnancy, and I think this all connects to, you know, when women get pregnant, you go to City Hall and then sort of like register that you are expecting. And then you get explanation from the City Hall what kind of subsidy they offer or what kind of service they offer. And at first, I didn't think too much. And they help us to do all the checkups, and the city pay you for checkup. And so I was not thinking so much. And Michael was in the car. I myself went to talk to the City Hall. So I just said, okay.
I didn't know you were doing that.
I know.
Or I would have been with you on your shoulder.
Yes. So I said, okay. But then I realized, wait, this is kind of a trap after talking to Michael. So we canceled the sign and redone. So we are not in their sort of like a system.
We
like
said, we don't want your money.
But what's happening is when we went to the City Hall and said, we don't want money because we are going to raise our child on our own. And then they understood that, but they kept trying to push and won't still give us money. But eventually, what the lady said is, if you do not get the subsidy, what happened is that the government cannot monitor how the child is doing. So what happened?
We're like, well, that's the point.
That's what you want. So
then she pulled in her partner. This is 2 weeks ago in Okinawa.
To convince us to go along with their policy. And the lady at the desk said, when people sign and get the subsidy, what happens is women goes to clinic to check up, and then the hospital contacts to the City Hall you live in. Then they get the money from the City Hall. But in exchange, the hospital give the City Hall the result of checkups. So they want this information. And
it was weird.
Yes, and they said they give us big subsidy twice. First, when we report that we are pregnant, and then after the child is born, the personnel from City Hall will visit our house and see how baby's doing. That's the qualification in order to get the second subsidy. I feel like those people are not just a regular City Hall staff. They're like an intelligent officer.
They were clearly
very creepy.
Those two women together were a clear tag team.
Very creepy. Yeah. So they collect information, trying to put us into this digital jail control system from the time baby's in mother's womb.
All right. I want to connect two things because I think I understand the paradigm you're describing. On the one hand, you've talked about Catherine Austin Fitts and her model about what some people would call technocracy, the turnkey totalitarian state. Basically, the idea that there is something like a digital control structure being erected around us that we can't detect because the features of it have an excuse. There's a rationalization that comes along with them. Of course, you want cars that can be shut off if a criminal is trying to escape, or if somebody is going to drive their car drunk and the car won't let them. That sounds like something the public should get behind. But when you realize that what that means is every single car can be turned off if you, for example, don't like their vaccine mandate, or you say something online that they don't want said. So on the one hand, there are lots of indications of a control structure being built. In the US, we have a fight over real ID, which we now are told that we have to have in order to fly, which in fact you don't have to have in order to fly. You can have a passport card and that works just as well, but they don't tell you that. They make you think, oh, if you never want to fly again, maybe you could avoid this, but otherwise you better get it. So you've got the digital architecture on one hand, and then you've got what you're talking about with depopulation. And here I think we have to slow down a little bit, because for people who are not used to traveling in circles that discuss these things in sober terms, that's going to sound preposterous. It's going to sound very far-fetched. But if you look at, for example, what you're calling the plandemic, that's a term I don't use. I'm cautious about it. I understand why you do use it. But there is clearly a lot of nonsense in that pandemic, right down to the idea that it was a pandemic. They literally redefined the term pandemic in order to make that disease qualify. So that's your first hint that something isn't right. But many people will hear this discussion and they will think, well, whatever it was bad, but it didn't kill nearly enough people to matter. The disease plus the shots killed an ungodly number of people, but it didn't do a dent in the world population. On the other hand, what they don't track is the fact that the downstream consequences of COVID, the disease, a disease which people get multiple times, that does damage across systems of the body in a way that's very unusual for a disease, a respiratory disease, that plus the damage done by the shots actually has a much longer term effect. Basically, it reduces the life expectancy of all of the people who were exposed to it, which means everybody on planet Earth. Not everybody took the shots, but COVID is circulating. There's no way to stop it. So if something was interested in depopulating, actually COVID is a contributor, the whole phenomenon. It reduces life expectancy, and that means that the overall number of people you expect on the planet at any one moment is lower than it would otherwise be. And then when you realize, okay, I know the US case much better than I know what's going on in Japan, but in the US at the moment, it has become sophisticated for young people not to find a romantic partner, to put off child rearing, many of them so that it never becomes a feature of their life. Those who do decide to reproduce tend to do it very late. Those things reduce population also. If you look at the sophistications around gender switching, right? It's become fashionable for people who are perfectly reproductively capable to use drugs and surgery and render themselves infertile. So once again, we have something that reduces population. The commonality and the comfort that the population has with abortion, once again, that's going to be a reducer of population. So it's interesting that across the board, we see everything that would tend to drive the number down increasing, including mysterious things like a decrease in testosterone and sperm count in males. All of these things point in the same direction. And now I want to put the two things together, and you tell me if this fits your paradigm. If your purpose was to control the world population and bend it to your will, whoever you might be, there's a question of how much power you have, and then there's a question of how many people you have to control. If you have some amount of power that you've generated by, technologies that shut down your car and your bank account, and you have some population that you need to control. If you reduce the number of people you need to control, the amount of control you have to erect is smaller in order to get the job done. So you see both of these things moving in tandem, right? We are antinatal at the same time that we are pro technologies that are prone to authoritarian abuse. And those two things could be coincidence, or they could be part of the same architecture designed to create a control structure that we in the public can't defeat. Is that a fair summary?
Indeed, and a lot more, right? And a great deal more. And none of this started during our lifetimes, our great-grandparents weren't born when this started. This started long ago. By the time we got involved in this, it didn't start with Obama. It didn't start with anybody born today. We were all born on a spaceship that was already fully functioning. And now the various organizational structures continue to work in complex ways that I think as an evolutionary biologist, you talk about frequently. I mean, how these things, the difference between what is emergent and what is planned, and actually what plans are emergent. I mean, you know how this can get all recursive and whatnot, but I mean, it's quite a fascinating subject. But what we can clearly see is there are very clear patterns, and the move to depopulation is old. This has happened over and over and over. Depopulation. We got whole massive amounts of books here and old papers on how to depopulate, like different parts of the world, and swapping populations between Bulgaria, Greece, and Turkey, and these sorts of things. I mean, these are old books. They've been doing this since the Roman times at a minimum. So what we're facing is something that's already brought to a high art form. So by the time we were born, we're in a cathedral of this stuff.
Okay, so I want to ask you a question, because there are two ways to understand the picture you're now painting. One is that there is a long-standing plan, many generations in the architecting, that we are facing. Another is that this is a common pattern of history, and that we are living a current version of something that has been deployed here and deployed there, but it's not contiguous with the modern version. Which of it is going on? Is this a multi-generational project? And if so, whose? Or is it a new manifestation of an old pattern?
Can I answer this? Oh, thank you. And because Masako has something to say on that too. But when it comes to one of the most predictive paradigms I use is I just go, what would life do? Take off all the names, all the religions, all the whatevers, the cults, this, that, and the other, the Masons or whatever. What would life do? Life seeks efficiency, right? It's going to find the shortest path. It's going to be stigmergic. I wrote about the stigmergic ways. You look at the old, it starts off as a deer path, and it's an Indian path, and it's somebody looking for gold path, and before you know it's a little dirt highway, and before you know it's a 4-lane highway, and it's got a malfunction junction, because that's where all the Indians used to meet too, right? So I mean, so part of it is when you look at what would life do, life would make a canal or a land bridge over the Kra Isthmus in Thailand, right? That's what life would do, to bypass the Strait of Malacca. Al Johnson and I, who I think you were with in Darien, I don't know if he was on that trip, but Al's been down there with us. Al's a former EOD officer, and we've traveled the world studying these things, and he's quite an academic, actually. So we went to Kra Isthmus in 2014, Al and I. We're like, sooner or later, something's going to happen to Malacca, and life is going to make a canal across the Kra Isthmus. Now, the first, itchings to make a canal or a land bridge across the Kra Isthmus was in at least 1667 or before, right? And so, like Panama Canal, where that started off in the early 1500s, the idea of doing that. So, I mean, these are old ideas that finally come to life, right? But life would make a path across the Kra Isthmus, one way or the other. I think eventually it will, unless something interrupts the flow of human life, right? And so what I'm getting to is, if you just look and ask yourself, what would life do? Life, if one ant bed wanted to destroy the Chinese ant bed, they would close Malacca. For sure. They would close Hormuz. They would close Malacca. They would close the Turkish Straits, Bosphorus. They would close Suez for a spell, Bab el-Mandeb, Danish Strait. That's why we were just up there recently. They would do all these things. And the Russians just recently threatened Danish Strait like 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago, right? A couple of weeks ago. But Masako and I were up at the Danish Strait a few months ago warning about, we think eventually this is going to be a target, which is directly related with Panama and some other things, actually, the Danish Strait, believe it or not.
I have to stop you because I think you told me a month ago to watch that one. You told me you thought it was a choke point that we were going to see closed.
Eventually, yeah. I think the Danish Strait eventually will be. And I think, where we discovered that Masako was definitely pregnant was in Hamburg. And we were in Hamburg because that's the third biggest port in Europe, and it's the biggest in Germany. If it gets truly kinetic with... One thing is a big question is why is BASF... Why was it not blown up in World War II? And why is it not blown up now? You see, there is one of those Isaac Asimov. That's curious. So I asked a retired colonel recently, Roxanne Watkins, because she studies more of the human architecture. We study that too, but we also study more of the physical geography and geology and those sorts of things, but the overlap is quite serious. And so I asked her recently. We were on a group call, and I said, "Why was BASF not blown up in World War II? Why was it not blown up recently?" Because that is an Isaac Asimov, that's curious moment. And she said, "Well, actually," and she started to explain why, because the oligarchical structure over top of BASF, well, they want to keep that because BASF would be child's play to destroy. 1 or 2 missiles, that bad boy's done. It's like a human body, and the people at BASF, they liken BASF to like a human body. If this thing gets closed down, we can't just restart it. This is Frankenstein, and it's literally dead for years. You can't just restart it. You can't turn it off and turn it back on. The thing will probably blow up, right? As according to them, right? There'll be all kinds of explosions and fires to restart that thing. It's 10 square kilometers, right? It's massive, or maybe 10 square miles. It's 10 square of those 1 units. And but what the point is you can see it on, and there's quite a few books about it too. Like one of them is called The Devil's Chemists, which I've ordered it and I haven't read it yet. And it's about the chemist. And BASF, when you go there, it's BASF. We make chemistry, right? They're the ones who brought the Haber-Bosch process to the high level that it is now, the 2 German chemists, right? They're the ones who, according to BASF, they produce about 40,000 chemicals that are used in various processes, like making the ink colors on these things and that sort of thing on this globe, or probably making the foam of the globe as well, right? And so, but BASF is key to it. But yet BASF never gets hit with drones, never blows up, never wasn't hit in World War II. It's had some explosions, don't get me wrong. They've had some explosions like ammonium nitrate, I think, blew up one of the factories, and I've got some of the old photos. Actually, it was like 100 years ago. And but they've had some accidents, but there's no massive like here we come with the B-29s type stuff, right? Why?
So, in some sense, what you're suggesting is that it's too central to the plans of all of the players who have the power to do something about it. Basically, everybody agrees to leave it alone. Is that your point?
That's what it looks like. And so that brings up the question of Panama Canal. Panama Canal, you will want to control it, but you don't want it blown up. You would want to control it, right? Because it is controllable, but it's also, as you know, very easy to interrupt. And which is, even as they were building it, they're like, man, this canal it's a beautiful work of art, but it's easy, like a work of art. It can be splashed and broken easy. And so, so you would want to control it, but if you wanted to put the Chinese into famine, which is clear that the Zionists want to put the Chinese into famine, you would close Malacca and you would start a war probably between Argentina and Brazil, and you would want to control Panama because you need to cut off, and you need to control northern Argentina and southern Argentina, which they are fighting over, because the bioceanic corridor will go through the northern part. Masako and I went up there and got on a train in the northern part. It actually, I don't know, a year and a half ago or something, and we. That bioceanic corridor will go between Brazil and Paraguay and Argentina and Chile, right? Now, Chile, not to go into the details, but the bottom line is you want to control these routes and resources. If you want to reduce their human resources in numbers, you're going to want to cut off their food.
Okay, so hold on a second. I want to go back here. You said, now I must tell you, I'm very cautious about the term Zionist because it's a magic term.
It's a loaded term.
It's not only loaded, but it's like a trap, because to some people it means you support the state of Israel's right to exist, and to other people it means you support some greater Israel vision in which Israel has hegemony over the Middle East. But let's just say something is in control of Israeli foreign policy, and it is having a profound impact on the Middle East, the United States, etc. I think you're using the term Zionist for whatever that thing is. You're also saying that it's clear that it wants to create famine in China. Now, I don't know why that would be. Can you help me understand what that connection is?
Right. The emergence of the Zionism that I would call political Zionists, that's what most people call it. I mean, that's a very sophisticated psyop, just like the psyop that took, Scots-Irish culture, people like me, and make them think they're Cherokee Indian, right? And, which was very effective. And it actually happened during the same time frame, believe it or not. And anyway, not to go into that, but it's so amazing to look at these parallel things that happened. But the Zionism, after the Zionism that we know, well, like you said, there's different ways of parsing this out, but the Suez Canal opened in 1869, right? And so when that Suez Canal opened, some of the British, specifically English, thought that, hey, this is the backbone of the British Empire, and they were calling it that, right? Now, at the same time, there was an emergent Zionist movement, and the British crown, they hijacked that like a Pinocchio, and they started using that. There was two different groups doing their same thing. The Zionists wanted Israel. That area of Israel is one of the most important places on earth, geographically speaking. It is very well situated, right? And if you wanted, and now you've got the Suez Canal there. Now it's far more important than it was yesterday before it opened, right? And the English and the French, everybody were worried, that, hey, Egypt French are the ones that opened the canal, but they were very concerned that Egypt would take it. The British were concerned, and they did, right? And that basically this could be used against the British Empire. But the British Empire, keep in mind, as they were forming Israel, which took generations, right? Along with the Zionists like Theodore Herzl and all those guys. And, they made their own language, modern Hebrew, Pearl, and, Yehuda changed his name. I've got his book right here somewhere. I just had it out the other day, but he changed. And keep in mind, while they were making modern Hebrew, we were doing the same thing with the Chinese, making modern Mandarin, right? And so the language wars so what I'm getting to, it's not just custom fit. This was just done in Israel. This sort of pattern happens all over the world. Developing your own language so you can cut people off from speaking Cantonese. You can cut them off from speaking Shanghai dialect or whatever, right? So you got the Chinese, we formed the Soviet Union, or somebody did, and the Chinese empire, that's all synthetic, right? The United States is synthetic. The United States, I just had 4 books come in today. I ordered them a long time ago. They finally came in this morning from the Virginia Company of London, right? Which my family came over with in 1609, right? I mean, so these things are old. But what I'm getting to is, go back to Zionists. The Zionists were, they were custom made, let's say, or formed to get control of that area. Now, what else is going on at the time? At that time, the Arabian Peninsula, we're talking late 1800s, was called Arabia Felix, right? It was called Happy Arabia, right? I've got some of the old maps. You can look at old maps. It's Happy Arabia, Arabia Felix, right? And so Kuwait didn't exist. Iraq and Iran. Iran existed, but I mean, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Yemen, they didn't exist. But, Percy Cox came along, and you should see the old information more around Percy Cox. Percy Cox comes along basically with his crayons one day and draws all the borders, right? Because they were making these synthetic countries. I call them the synthetic 1922 countries, like Kuwait, Bahrain, UAE, Saudi Arabia. They made those countries so they could put strong men in there to control routes and resources, right? The whole Arabian Peninsula, Jordan, Syria, they're synthetic countries. Levant as well, right? Lebanon, Israel is the 1948 synthetic, right? Panama is the 1903 synthetic. We made it on November 3rd, 1903 to make the Panama Canal. All these states that we took, one after another, synthetic states, right? We started building an army in Hawaii in 1850, right? But out of Hawaiians, right? And so what I'm getting to is this is normal business, but and sometimes the puppet gets huge. Sometimes this is normal in warfare when you're raising up puppets, right? And sometimes the puppet gets so strong it pulls the puppet master down and controls him or kills him, right? And this happens a lot as well. And one of the things that has happened anyway, as the long formation process of building, what we call Israel today, it's a synthetic country, was a huge psyop. Schofield Bible, all these different things. Hey, this is, again, many of the people like me of Scott-Irish culture, we think we are part Cherokee, right? Why do they think that? For the same exact reasons that many people who are not Jewish at all, whatever that is, were brought over to Israel to take that land, not for themselves. They were told it's for themselves so they could have their own homeland, right? So what it really was to get control of that area, right? And as oil became more important and other things became more important, the Suez Canal just increased and increased and increased in importance, right? So now it's like an unbelievably important area of the land. There will absolutely be wars for anything there. But that whole area is synthetic countries, and those are being reduced now. When I say reduced, it's very clear that those countries are being dissolved. At one point during the Iraq War, I was down in Basra province with a British Army officer. I was with the 2 Rifles. That was a unit that actually fought my great something grandfather in North Carolina in the Revolutionary War, the Green Jackets, right? So I'm on the Iran-Iraq border with this British Army officer in the unit that one of my ultra great grandfathers fought against. And I said, this is pretty ironic. So imagine this, an American writer on the Iran-Iraq border, which you drew, and British Percy Cox, and we're out here at nighttime in combat. Nobody's shooting at the moment. We're actually just say in the war. And it's just so odd that we're out here on the Iran-Iraq border together right now. And that was about 2007, maybe, and he he's a student of history. He got the deep levels of irony there. There was, Iraq itself, I think in this regard is also being reduced. I spent a lot of time with people like Paul Wolfowitz, he used to invite me to dinner and things like that, right? He told me so many stories. But anyway, I think in regard to what's happening now, you'll probably end up seeing Mosul Dam get blown up, I think, or let's say fail in some way, right? And I think that these countries over there like Iraq, I don't know. Let's see if they go for it. It would make sense to destroy Mosul Dam at this point. And I first wrote about that in about 2006, I think, or something like that. But anyway, the point is when you look at the larger structure and you look at the way things are now, they're not static. This is a flowing river. The same man never crosses the same river twice, but it is the same river, right? And let's say it follows the same rules, let's say, right? And what we're getting now is just the normal massive war for routes and resources. And one of those resources is human resources. And that battle we often call ideology.
Okay. So I want to ask you about something. At the same time that we are looking at a control architecture taking a giant leap forward, and we're looking at various things that seem to point towards a population reduction and a reduction in the agency of people. it's interesting that that's happening at the same moment that AI is suddenly threatening to render the labor of most people useless. And I don't know what to make of that. Is it a coincidence in time? Or is the fact that all of the sophisticated people can see the writing on the wall from the perspective of, I don't know, what has traditionally been called labor, that most people's labor is going to be replaced in the next, 20 years, if that. Is that just a coincidence, or are we in an end game? Is something playing by new rules because it knows that it doesn't need to preserve the current system? Masako, do you have an instinct here?
No, I need to understand the question well.
Masako needs to understand the question more closely, right?
Well, Michael, why don't you take a crack at it and then see if it becomes clearer? Okay.
I'll just give it a short answer because you know how I am; it'll go on forever. So, but the point is I think it's partly both. If the question is, is the AI, the advent of the AI, which is the ultimate. The advent of machines that replace labor is old. Look where the Luddites, that's old stuff, right? But the population actually kept growing, right? It just
and I would point out that this is different than all the others because
definitely
even
different.
if you invent a machine that can do the work of multiple men, you have to scale up the production of that machine in a way that computer architecture, you need robots. If you want AI to be able to replace your plumber, you need to have a robot who's willing to go into your crawl space. But nonetheless, the basic humanoid robot that can have its production scaled up and an AI capable of turning that into something that can replace any tradesman, that writing is on the wall. And it's not specific to it's not the loom and the threat that it poses to people who weave. The point is that robot can go into your crawl space and it can be your electrician, it can be your plumber, it can inspect your foundation, it can do all of those things. It doesn't need to sleep. So this is not some industry being threatened. This is all of them simultaneously. And that has a meaning to those. Masako was talking about the control architecture. And the point is, what's going to happen when you have a huge number of people suddenly realizing that whatever they trained to do isn't going to exist and there's no backup plan for them, right? That looks like a revolution. And those who fear revolution are presumably making some kind of plans for how to deal with it. And so far, all I can tell is that they want to tell us that the problem, that people always say there's, that the loom is going to create massive unemployment, and it does the opposite. So what they want to do is just tell us stories. But if those of us who disagree with that analysis and say, actually, this time is different, are right, then the point is there appears to be no plan for how to deal with an unemployed human population.
Now, this has happened over and over and over. The pattern is clear, though. It's not that this hasn't happened. It just hasn't happened on the scale that you're describing, which is obviously true. It's obviously real. But for instance, as an example, so many examples. Like when the Spanish were making so much silver and gold from their colonial days in Peru and all these sorts of things, they started outsourcing their labor. They were getting their ships made in the Netherlands and up in Denmark and by the British. The Italians, their ships were getting made by their competition, right? And then when the Dutch got rich, they started investing in the British East India Company, right? So it's like, and then the British attacked them, of course. And, then the United States gets very wealthy and starts building up China, right? And so but when you look at a premise of the paradigm that's, evolved into something pretty predictive. One premise is that life seeks efficiency. Just look at this thing, this life force, this beautiful life force. It wants to be efficient and elegant. It wants to be smooth, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. It just does its thing, right? And it will seek efficiencies. And as people move, let's say I was in many textile companies in northern Georgia and in South Carolina and in western North Carolina. I was in quite a few of them, dozens, right? I was there doing stuff. And so, and at that time, that was when NAFTA was about to be passed, right? So I was talking with people in human resources and the people running these plants. This was many years ago. And they were saying, like, we're down in Guatemala and all these places doing reconnaissance, and Mexico and all these different places on where we're going to move our factories to. All right. So all these people in these factories here that are sewing Lee jeans and Levi jeans, they're going to be unemployed, right? Because we're going to move them. And they were looking at anthropological studies like, oh, this Indian tribe. They were telling me all kinds of, these Indians do very well. These don't know how to attention to detail. So what I'm getting to is when you look at human resources as a meat machine, sort of, that's the way the globalist, because the globalist is just a feelingless machine, and it's like it's an architecture, and so those jobs did move down there, and the factories did close. Right? What they didn't go to machines, they went to other people, but now those people were unemployed, right? And so there they went. And a lot, the drug problems up in those areas were severe. One of the population reductions is clearly like opioids and those sorts of things, right? And so, and the use of these things to reduce populations is well described.
So I see that picture the same way you do. I look at the streets of major American cities, and what I see is that there just so happens to be a ready supply of drugs that kill you slowly, but not that slowly, for people who fall off the bottom of the ladder and find themselves in despair with no way out. And then you can see the mirror image of that in Canada, where as soon as they have an excuse to offer you medically assisted suicide, they're all about it, right? Like if you're depressed or you're injured from the COVID shot, I've heard so many of these nightmare stories where the Canadian government is actually literally just offering people like, oh, that sounds terrible. Do you want to die? And
we went there and saw it. We were there. We saw it. We went to see it.
But my point is, okay, you've got a, sanitized version of this in Canada, and you've got the unsanitary version on the streets of Portland, but it's not different. The point is, oh, you've hit despair? How about some death, right? It's fentanyl or the MAID program in Canada. It's the same idea. And it just so happens that we're not solving the fentanyl crisis because, well, maybe from somebody's perspective, it's not a crisis, it's the solution to a crisis.
Masako, you should say what we saw in Canada. That was amazing. That drug clinic we went to, and the guy got upset, and there's it looked like, well, we've been to Skid Row. We've been to Portland. Masako, we went to Portland, and they gave Masako needles and the whole rubber band thing in a church parking lot.
We didn't use it.
We didn't use it. Yeah, Masako has to point out. Masako doesn't even like to touch anything related to. We were in Thailand going to these cannabis shops and stuff, and Masako wouldn't even touch it. She's like, no, I'm not even touching it. And she wanted me to wear gloves. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't know if I understood Dr. Weinstein's question that Michael already answered, but you were talking about AI and the future of humanity.
Yes, so, I was wondering if AI and the threat that it poses to labor is connected to the fact that there are all of these indicators that famine is coming, whether it's the shutdown of the flow of oil in the Middle East, or it's the explosion of food production facilities, or it's the destruction of flocks of chickens over bird flu. There are lots of things that point to a coming food shortage. Is that connected to the fact that there's also about to be a shortage of jobs?
I think, when we see the faces of people on the public space who are pushing this AI, and that data centers are those globalist, powerful people. So I think for them, it's a tool to create a digital jail to manipulate us and control us. But I always look at try to have hope, and maybe it's because I am experiencing pregnancy now. So I think as human existence, when we think of this, I think it's not just about labor or just self-existence, but what should I say? To start explain what I am thinking, I feel we are more than just a body, or like what happens in this world, or what we do, or what happens to us is not just what comes out from our brain. That's what I genuinely feel, because baby is growing whether I think or not. And when I breathe, this breathing is for two of us, and baby just kicks, and my body is really changing. And when Michael first said, I felt super dizzy, like this whole world was rotating.
You felt dizzy, not me.
But Michael said, I was feeling, morning sickness. So, it's a bad thing. If I use my brain, then my train of thought would be, it's hard, it's difficult. But Michael said, you're going through mother gym. Then the whole idea changed. I'm just in a mother gym, so that's good. Even though I feel nausea, that's good, because I'm in the gym and I gotta do this to thrive in the gym. So
you livened right up. Just to reframe, you're not sick. If you're not feeling queasy and nauseous, then you're not trying.
Yes, and like my body changes, my like breast grows, and as I read my books, how my body is changing, part of the body changes so that when baby is born, baby can smell where the milk comes from, and so on. So as humans have, like Michael explained, mother nature or life. Us, we are living according to life. So it's not even like we are the main character. We are like the relay of life. But when we think of existence of AI doesn't have life. I think AI actually itself, if us life created AI, then we can say AI lives on life. But AI, I think, actually rely on us. And AI needs water too, right? Because it needs water to operate. So it's got also a weakness, I think. So eventually, we would have some difficulty at first to coexist with AI, because there are people who use AI to harm other human. But then I think we would go towards coexistence. Otherwise, AI will fail, because as we just basically human reproduce and have offsprings, and then those offspring have their children. Because if my baby is recently I was so moved to learn, if our baby is girl, then at this point, even in womb, babies, the reproductive organ is produced, and the baby herself have eggs too. So
this is so important. You've talked about this sometimes. It's so important.
Yeah, it's very moving. So I am carrying not just my child, but possibly my grandchild too. So whether we think or not, we are continuing. But if we think of AI, how AI can continue, ultimately, AI needs life too. which means AI needs us.
Oh, that's marvelous. And I want to highlight a couple things that you said there. One, I love your framing that you might be even carrying your grandchild. And it fits with the other thing you said about being a relay, because this is really true. We are confused in part by evolution itself to see ourselves as very central. But we don't realize that each of us is the product of a 3.5 billion year sequence of ancestors, not one of which ever failed to reproduce. And so we are very lucky, very temporary custodians of consciousness and agency. And the whole purpose of the thing is to pass that on as well as we can so that it continues as far into the future as it can. And I would say, as humans with values, not only is continuing into the future central to the mission, but giving those that we deliver that gift to the full liberty. You know, it's better to survive as a slave than not at all, but we have an obligation to future generations to give them as much liberty and meaning going forward as we can possibly. And we're doing a terrible job of this. You guys are going to do a great job, but we as humans in general are doing a very poor job of protecting future generations, giving them a world that is not degraded, giving them a path that has purpose built into it. And I agree with you. I'm not terribly concerned about AI displacing us, but I'm very concerned that the people who are playing the games that you two are studying and talking about, these ancient games that extend back into antiquity, the people playing those games have a new weapon at their disposal in the form of AI. And to the extent that AI looks like an excellent way to do away with the problem of workers who are unruly and make demands and get sick and all of those things, that they may see this as an opportunity to make their problem simpler. And I'm wondering if that's not the connection with all of the things that point to depopulation, from fentanyl and medical assisted suicide and abortion and antinatalism and gender confusion and testosterone declines. All of those things point in the same direction at the same moment that the people playing these cynical games know that the average person is going to be even less useful to them 5 years from now than they are today.
You know, Masako, you brought it up so many times. If we have a daughter, you actually have our granddaughter in your belly right now. We have such a responsibility. It's just over the top. Because, as you know, the baby, if she's a female, already has the eggs of her children in her right now. Everything that we breathe and eat, we're very cautious. Masako was always cautious, but when the moment of pregnancy came, wow, she's like watching every single grain of rice. Yeah. It's true. It's great. It's absolutely wonderful. Long-haired general. I have to listen to her.
You cannot possibly be too careful in light of how toxic the world has become. I would agree.
Yes.
It's a good investment. All right. Is there anything else from the point of view of listeners who are trying to incorporate all of the things that you have talked about? Is there something that you can leave us with? How people should be understanding the present, what they might be expecting from the near future, and any words of wisdom about how to cope with it?
Okay. Yeah. Masako and I often go through this when we're alone too. It's like, no, you go first. But well, you know, all of our family trees, you've pointed this out in different ways over many of your interviews over time, Bret. All of our family trees have been through a lot of stuff, right? We have there is nobody watching this whose family tree didn't go through a lot of war and a lot of pandemic and a lot of famine, right? There is no exception to that. We are children of that. We are children of ruggedness and good times too. And But despite all the things that we know and all the things that we see, Masako and I, and you too, I can tell, are still happy. I mean, despite we get it. We get how serious it is, but Masako, you know, whenever we wake up in the morning, I start singing songs to Masako. I mean, like literally, I'm not joking. I mean, like we, as Masako knows, the first thing out of my mouth every morning is some kind of a joke or a song. We're happy. Why are we happy? I don't know, because we know we're part of, a bigger plan. It's not us. It's not about us.
This is so important, and I have such a hard time. I'm glad you pointed to it. I have such a hard time conveying this to people because on the one hand, I'm sort of famous for having a very dark perspective on where we are, but I am not unhappy. In fact, I wake up every day.
I watch him. I tell Masako, look at him. He's talking about the worst stuff on planet Earth, but he's clearly happy.
Well, I mean, my life is a gift, as yours clearly are, right? I have the most wonderful wife. I have 2 incredible children. I have miracles out my door every day. I literally just have to go outside to look at them and think about what they are, and I'm filled with joy. And what's more, as terrible as it is to face some of the really diabolical things that are in motion, it does not leave me wondering how I should be investing my time. There's too many things. There's too many things of great importance. It's not boring, and I know that, wasting time is not the right approach. So my life is full of meaning, as clearly yours are.
Right. Find a mission, a very good mission, and you will always be employed and always be happy. Just make it a good mission. And if you find that you picked the wrong mission, it's no course correct. It's fine.
Beautiful. All right. Well, Michael Jan and Masako Ganaha, it's been a real pleasure. And I must say it is a privilege and an honor to stand shoulder to shoulder with you on this mission that doesn't have a name.
Should we name it?
If you got one, I'm all ears.
I don't have one.
Yeah. All right. Mission all hands on deck. All right. Well, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. And I look forward with excitement and trepidation to hear any of your future predictions. And I'm very much looking forward to your excellent news when your child arrives. So
thanks
you.
Again. Come visit us.
Hope to
Bye,
see
Bret.
you. All right. Ciao.